Hi Year 10, I'm not able to be with you today, so I thought I'd put together just a quick video to explain what I want you to use this lesson for. Our learning intention for today is we are learning to explain how language techniques which denote opposition are used in Shakespeare's plays. And maybe that doesn't make very much sense to you right now. It's actually not as complex as it sounds. So techniques that denote opposition basically fall under the umbrella term of antithesis. That's the term we would use for that, antithesis. And whilst you may not be familiar with the term antithesis, you are probably familiar with examples of techniques that are considered antithesis or contribute to antithesis. So for instance, juxtaposition is an example of one such technique, as is oxymoron. So both of those techniques would be techniques you've come across before. You just may not have thought of them as techniques that create antithesis. The reason that antithesis is important is partly because the theme pairings that we're looking at are examples of antithesis. So we're looking at love versus hate, life versus death, fate versus free will, etc. So it's important that you're familiar with this terminology, and this lesson is really dedicated to you being able to define the concept of antithesis, identify examples of antithesis at work in specific passages. So there's two passages in particular we're going to have a look at. One is from Act 2, Scene 3, it's Friar Lawrence, and one is another monologue from Romeo. What you've got to work from today is basically a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to put on LMS. And basically everything that's in that PowerPoint presentation can be handwritten into your English books by you. So I'd like you to please take notes. I'd like you to handwrite the notes. Obviously the PowerPoint is there for you to access at another time as well. But I do think it's important that you make notes of everything that's in there, including the learning intention and the success criteria, please. The success criteria for your reference includes that you can define antithesis, oxymoron, and juxtaposition, which are examples of techniques that create antithesis, that you can identify examples of it. And finally, there's a challenge question there, which is, can you explain how these techniques relate to themes in Romeo and Juliet? That's not something that we've explicitly learned before, but that's just a challenge there for you. So basically, once I've finished this video, what I'd like you to do is to go to the LMS and find that PowerPoint. And in fact, if you want to, you can pause this video now and make sure that everyone's on track with that and can access that PowerPoint. And then you could follow through now as I'm explaining it. So what you'll be doing after you write down the learning intention and the success criteria is you'll be noting down these notes on antithesis and on oxymoron and on juxtaposition. And then you'll see that the last two slides of the PowerPoint presentation are descriptions of activities that I'd like you to complete. All the activities are basically part of a worksheet that will be issued to you. So I'll send that through to the teacher who's taking you as well. And you can work your way through that worksheet. It will ask you to highlight examples from the passages of antithesis in the two different excerpts from the text. And then finally, the third activity there in the PowerPoint presentation asks you in pairs, so you would need to choose a buddy, in pairs to choose one of the theme antithesis pairs. Sorry, that's confusing, but basically on the final slide of the PowerPoint, you will see that there are lots of little couplets, little pairs of antithesis. So light and dark, fate and free will, love and hate, life and death, etc. And then you're going to, with a buddy, pick one of those, and you're going to basically challenge each other. You're going to create almost like a debate. You're going to choose one side of that antithesis each, and you will be coming up with some arguments as to why your side of the antithesis overcomes or overpowers the other side. So an example of that is, let's say that you and your buddy choose fate versus free will. Let's say you would then try and come up with some arguments to say, I think that fate completely, or destiny completely, overcomes and triumphs over individual free will in the play. Like I see evidence for that here, here, and here. So support your argument with reasons. And then your partner's task would be to come up with the opposite argument. They'd be trying to say, no, actually, individual free will and agency and individual, like even human error, ultimately steers the course of events much more than fate or destiny does in the play. So you'd be arguing two different sides of that antithesis. I'm going to check your work next lesson, so you don't need to upload that anywhere, but your teacher will be wandering around and checking that you're writing the notes in your book and that you're on task with the activities. So this is just a really good opportunity for you to get super familiar with this term antithesis. It should come up every lesson from now, basically until the end of the term. A lot of what you're going to be looking at in terms of studying themes is to do with this central idea of antithesis. So I want you to be comfortable using that term. You can practice saying it out loud. You can practice saying the adjective form of it, which is antithetical, which sounds even fancier and is even more difficult to say. So get comfortable with this word and comfortable with this concept. And I'll see you next lesson. I hope you enjoy learning about this.